Welcome everybody to another one of our inner circle calls. We're excited to have you here today. And all right, we're here. It's week 4, folks. We've gone through 3 previous weeks of leadership tutorials, and we're jumping into our develop people and scale leadership. And so here's what I want you to understand before we even start. Something that I hear often with founders is that they treat people development like an HR checkbox. They just drop it in there. And here's what I hear generally is they do annual reviews, they do some level of feedback loops, and maybe, just maybe, if you're in the right business or in the right organization, they'll do some professional development and they'll put some budget towards that in their annual planning. And then they sit back and they're like, why can't we scale? Well, here's the thing, is that every company is limited by the talent density multiplied by its leadership depth. Let me say that again. Every company is limited by its talent density multiplied by its leadership depth. And you're like, well, what the heck does that mean? Right? It's not the market size. It's not the capital at all that you throw into it, but it's how good your people are and how many leaders you can deploy to leading others. That's the constraint that most organizations face. So today we're going to talk about how do you build a system, not an HR process. We're not an HR process here. We're about building systems that allow you to scale. Because talent acceleration by itself creates more capacity than you can consume. So let's go. Let's get started. And I'm going to kick things off with the first question to get you guys going, to get everybody thinking here. What actually is talent development? Think of that first question. Answer it in your head. What is actually talent development for most of you? Naturally, most people will think it's training, right? Like, who thought training? Generally, that's what comes to mind, right? Well, you think of training, you send someone to do a course, or you get them a book, or maybe if the company is large enough, you pair them up with a mentor, right? Those are the things that are generally being done by companies today. Well, today we're going to flip that because that's not a system. So here's the actual model. Talent development, again, right, is what's going to help at the rate in which you expand your people through effective capacity multiplied leverage by creating others around them. So the first thing you want to look at on the variable side is, how do individuals grow? How can people actually grow? And how does leadership multiply in your teams? So I'm going to take you through one of the things that I've seen in my experience and how this actually looks. You go hire a manager, you bring them in, and it's day one, right? And they're doing well. Like, you show them what you think they're doing. So they kick off, you give them a function. They start scheduling people per se, right? But day one, that's their basic capacities that they're scheduling people. But 6 months later, nothing's changed. They're still doing their general function. They're still just scheduling people and doing the baseline of what you've asked them to do. So that's like your low growth. That's your entry level. But you want them to start thinking about, how do they start to grow themselves and how do they start to grow others around them? So fundamentally, the scenario has to change. You have to start defining for them, what is the path of growth? Day one, you come in, you start to schedule people. That's a task that you're managing. But now, as you're scheduling people and you're getting comfortable in that, I want you to now start to book deliveries. Okay, now the person starts to book deliveries. Okay, now that you're booking deliveries and you're scheduling people in your 3 months, by 6 months, I want you to train somebody else on how to do those tasks. You start to force, fundamentally, training of others into an organic task. And why would you want to do that? Because now you've expanded the capacity of others within your teams to start to train and develop others within their roles. And so this starts to naturally, organically grow people the trajectory. So in one section, you might have a company that hires one person. They come in for 6 months. All they're doing is task one. Another company where they're coming in and now you're layering in more tasks, but you're also pushing them to scale people upwards through those tasks. Now you're starting to grow. You see the difference? That's what we're talking about today, is optimizing for growth. So the key insight here is that growth is not random. It's a function, and we're going to do this through three things. The first ingredient, the first thing that we look at is what rate are you giving people problems beyond their current capacity? So are you challenging people outside of their current role is the first thing that you want to talk about and that you want to implement. The second one is around feedback density. How quickly do they get high quality input on what's working and what's not? Right? How quickly are they hearing, hey, this is working, this is great, keep it up, or that's not working, you need to pivot, you need to do better in this. Like the rate in which you're giving people that type of feedback is really important because it's going to start to really challenge that individual for growth. So the next one is whether they understand the concept. So what's the context depth? Do they get it? Whether they understand not just to do, but why it matters and how it connects to the bigger picture. So if you get all these things right, your growth, man, it just multiplies. It just takes off. But you miss any of one of those three things and you'll find that it starts to stall. So here's where most founders get it wrong. They focus entirely on an individual growth. They think, I have to make people better, but they ignore the multiplication factor. So you get into a company full of really good, capable contributors, but they're not leaders. They're just really good doers, right? If you think of most companies, they have like all these good doers that all of a sudden get promoted to leaders, but they haven't learned how to develop and how to lead others, so they fail at being leaders. Who's seen that in their workspace before? Like, just raise your hand if you've seen it, right? I've encountered this many times, and people get promoted outside of their capability because those organizations didn't scale them the right way. So to really unlock this is teaching people to create capabilities in others, not just for them to get better. That's true leadership depth. And it's how you break that scaling ceiling. That's how you actually get people to grow organically, but with a purpose and in a way that is scalable. So let's think about that in a capability ladder format. So I want you to think systems now. Let's map the actual levels of capability you need to build people up the right way. And for me, it's always like, systems and scalability. So I put it into 5 levels. And level 1, I call it the executor. This is, you give them a great task, you're very clear, and they get it, they complete it well. They follow the process, they hit the standards, they ask good questions when they're stuck. This is your baseline. So think of your executor, when done well, as your level 1, okay? Your level 2 becomes your problem solver. You give this person a problem, they figure out the right tasks, how do they execute them? They don't need the step-by-step instructions. They need the outcome. They need to know what are the constraints, and they need to know why they're doing what they're doing. That's a level 2. So if you start to think of how you scale somebody, you start to see how they start to grow. Into level 3, I label these ones the owner. They start to act like owners. You give them an objective and they identify the right problems to solve and they solve them. Simple. They see it, they see around corners, they make trade-offs independently, they're starting to get it, and they own their entire area of responsibility. That's That's that level of ownership. You break through that and you get into the elite levels. This is level 4, which is the leader. You give them a goal and they build a team to achieve it. They're not the one doing it. They're building others to get to the goal. Okay? They multiply capability through others. They're thinking team. They're thinking create others to enable them to make good decisions, and they develop the people around them. All right? That's that leader level. And then you get to the top. This is rare. This is really rare to find this level of leadership within most of organizations. And I call these the architects. You give these people missions. They design systems that produces outcomes. They build organizations and not just teams, right? They're building full out organizations. They create the conditions for leadership to emerge at scale. 5 levels, okay? So I want you all to make notes on those because it's critical that we understand the different levels within roles, because as we go down through this tutorial, it's all going to come together and stick for you. So most people today enter the job market, they get into a company, and they get stuck between level 2 and 3. That's where they live for the most part. And it's because the jump from level 2 to level 3 requires ownership, not just skill. Like you actually start to feel the pain of being an owner, right? Not in true context, but you have the burden, right? You have responsibilities. And so you also have to know, how do you think like that owner? You have to care about the outcome more than the task. So it's a bit of a jump to make that transition. And so how do you get there? How do you start to teach people to feel comfortable making that jump? And this is how you do it. First, you transfer accountability early. You don't wait until someone's ready. You give them small pieces where they own the outcome. We call this delegation, but it's delegation with a purpose, because you're not just delegating to get tasks off your plate. You're delegating to develop those people for them to grow. Okay. You might say, hey, you're now going to be in charge of this section, this area of a task. It might be like time management or time deliveries. This is your area. You're going to own this one. Whatever the outcome is, Bob, you got it. Okay. And now they own that. Now it's clear that they're responsible. It's not me. It's no longer me. Bob, you got it. I'm going to be here, but you go do it. Okay. Step 2 of this is they build context, not just for capacity, but to show them how they run the business, how they connect to that business, and how they're accountable for it. And they built metrics that allow them to see the why. That means that they have KPIs that trigger all the moving pieces, and they give them the information that they need to guide them. So all this looks good, right? Like you get it, you're understanding how your people are developing, but they still need to get up to the next piece and the next step, which is holding the standard. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and holding the standard was critical to the success of your teams and your culture, not the method, right? Tell them what winning looks like. Don't tell them how to get there. Let them figure it out. That's where ownership comes from. And now you're cooking. Now you're jumping into those, owner leader levels. And this is the hardest transition of all, because you're asking someone to stop doing and start enabling, to get their dopamine from other success. That means that they're not riding their own high anymore, right? They're not there. They're getting it through execution of others. And that sometimes is really hard, and particularly to real high performers, because high performers love to see their work come to fruition. So this one you have to manage as owners, business owners and leaders. You have to be aware of it, because what could happen if done wrong, they start to micromanage. And that's a really dangerous position to go into. So don't allow those leaders to start to micromanage others, okay? They might also, while doing so, start to burn out while trying to do too much. So teach them how to handle it the right way. by allowing people to set clarity first, right? Your team should never wonder what success looks like or why it matters, and really allow them to unblock execution. Focus on bottleneck removing. Let them be focused on removing obstacles, not the people themselves, but what are some of the landmines that I want my team to avoid? That's how they'll know they're doing their job really well. Okay. So those are sort of the things that we talk about as we start to build out systems to allow for people to grow. But let's actually put together the system that is going to let you develop people the right way. Okay. So as I've said before, most companies have performance reviews, right? I've sat in large companies, Fortune 500 companies, where they have an annual review. They sit you down and they talk about, hey, this is how the year went, and this is how the goals went, and here's some pluses, here's some, opportunities of improvements. But I'll tell you, unfortunately, a lot of those, 360 reviews, annual reviews, however you want to call them, most of them are theater. And why I say that? It's because real development doesn't happen on a one annual review meeting. That's BS. It doesn't happen that way. You want to know where it happens? It happens in the daily grind, in the daily flow of work. And that's truly how systems are built. So your first component of this is your capability map. You have to build this for every role in your company. Every role has to have a defined definition of what the capability at each level does. What does it look like? What is level 1, level 2, level 3 look like for this role? How does it go from one level to the other for you to understand when you're growing in a company? So to keep it simple, I'm just gonna give you 3 levels for you to understand. Okay, and I'll take an example of a dispatcher because this one makes it really easy for me. Okay, level 1 is a dispatcher comes into an organization. They understand how to plan. They understand how to use the dispatching tool. They understand how to make phone calls and answer customer questions. That's level 1. Okay, basic, very, very basic. That's your entry level into a position. But they want to grow and you want to scale. Then there's dispatcher 2. Now, dispatcher 2 does all of the level 1 tasks, but now they're planning. They're planning ahead. They're looking for 2-3 days out for activity. They're also invited to customer meetings where they learn about upcoming activity. Okay. Now they're forecasting activity for the customer base. They're planning dispatching activity. They're forecasting customer activity. And dispatcher level 2 is now broadening their capability. So where they may dispatch a function of the business, and maybe in transportation that could be long haul or highway, now they're learning city P&D, or they're learning another commodity for dispatching if it's oil and gas dispatch. Okay, but they're now learning a new skill around dispatching. That's your level 2. Now, as you progress to level 3, you do all of level 1, all of level 2, but now you're developing others with you. And you complete this growth plan in every role in your company. That is how you actually develop people to grow, and they can see their growth path along the way. They understand, what do I need to do to get to level 3? How do I get there? It's not about reading a book. It's not about picking up, a course or here or there. It's not about that. It's about growing through that right direction. Because by doing so, you're going to close that gap of the unknown, number 1, and then number 2, of the actual skill development is happening organically as they progress in their role. And so they're naturally learning and they're developing others in the same way, because by level 3, they're bringing others with them to learn too, right? So way different than you sitting down on an annual review, giving somebody feedback and saying, hey, go learn a new role. Go learn this. Sure. All right. I'll sign myself up for a course, but did it teach you something? Was it actually true, tested, and functional? No, right? It wasn't, because you learned it, but did you apply it? Maybe not. That's why this methodology really becomes super important as we really progress towards big picture. This is like the big picture conversation where you can tackle it quarter after quarter. You can look at people and sit down and say, this is how we want to develop you. This is how we want to really ensure that you have a succession plan in our company. And I've started applying this of late. I got to tell you, man, I as I was learning this and prepping it, I started applying it in the business where I hang my hat, Monday to Friday. And man, it's been really cool to see it putting it together. I could see how now I'm going to leverage the individual learning to have them grow as people and really grow as leaders in the company. So that's how you really take it to full leadership and full development. And you start to really leverage the mechanism, right? And that's how it becomes scalable, because you don't need to develop just people. You need to develop people to develop people. That's the only way this becomes scalable. So if you can challenge yourself to personally develop 5 leaders, and you can maybe touch 25 people total, well, that's pretty challenging. But if you develop 5 leaders, who each of them develop 5 leaders, you can touch up to 125 people. So that's the difference between a team and an organization. That's how you create the use of multiplication and really leverage scale to true form. And you could really modify this and really put a mechanism to teach your approach, right? So write this all down, and this is all going to be recorded here. But I want you to really understand, starting off, knowing what does good leadership look like for this role. Before you hire somebody, ask yourself that question as you define the role. What are the specific behaviors that I need this individual to create great teams? How often will I give this person feedback? How will they make decisions? And how will they develop others with them? Make it super explicit. That's how you're going to become really well known and developed in these roles and really entrenched in it. Because the only way to create good leaders is for you to understand that those roles will develop others along the way. Okay. So, to really sum this up, I wanted to really put this together and how companies use it. And so for me, I've seen this where at Willie's Trucking, we took this to levels of development in making clear, itemized accountability points. We built out a whole blueprint for every role in the organization. And it was so interesting that all of them had lead, manage, and accountable, as all those roles were where you were leading people. And we specifically put that because we wanted those individuals in those roles to be developing others around them. If they weren't doing that, we had those tough conversations that allowed people to know that they were on track or off track to making it happen. So I want to challenge this group today to really think about how your company will scale as fast as your people develop. That's critical, because everybody has growth aspirations. But if you don't have the right talent pool, then you're going to have a real big development problem. And you can't outsource that. You can't outsource development. That's your job as the founder, to build the systems that create leaders faster than you can consume them. So you have to create that system that we talked about, that capability map with clear levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, to show people their growth plan, to show them their path, so that they have evidence and that they know, what am I in for? What's the ride that I have to do to really become a true leader here? And then be able to provide feedback loops along the way, be able to coach them, understand pattern recognitions, and develop the right conversations, not once a year, not every just quarter, just to check the box and say that you did it, by truly having an apprenticeship model that shadows, that does reverse shadow, that shows them independent, that has full ownership, because that's how you're going to get them to operate like real leaders and owners throughout their career paths. So the challenge for this week is pick one person in your team, anyone in your team today, and map out the path from where they are today to where they'll need to go in the future to be a true leader in your company. Look at the specific gaps. Look at the specific projects and deliverables and the evidence that they're going to need. What receipts are they going to have to show you so that you know they're ready for the next level, right? Then sit them down and walk them through it. Show them the map. Show them of what that looks like. That is how you start to build a true development system, one person at a time, right? One role at a time. And that's how you build great leaders. So that's the tutorial for today. Alan, I'll pass it back to you.
Well, again, you didn't disappoint. That's a lot of stuff. That was a lot of stuff. I just finally quit taking notes. I shouldn't do that because I told everybody they got to take notes.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, so
You
now you know what
need
that
to.
means? Now I gotta go back. I gotta watch the replay and take some more notes. Anyway, want to say a special hello to Lacey, and we want to recognize that you're here, Lacey, and in the room. Thanks for being in the Zoom room with us. I know that you had your camera on a little bit ago, but you came in just moments after Hector started. But welcome. We're glad that you're here with us today. So, guys, you know you've all been here before. You know this is the part where we open it up. If you've got some questions for Hector about anything to do with the teaching, if you've got some comments, maybe, man, I never heard that way before. That kind of is new, a little bit new for me to look at it that way. That's a bit of an aha. We want to hear those things as well. So begin to think about what comments you have, what questions you have. And of course, since I challenged you to take some notes and categorize them in the A and the C and the T, I'd love to hear your feedback on that. So as your brain is churning and you're freaking out maybe a little bit, if I'm going to call on you, I'm going to turn it
Yeah.
over to Willie, and I'm going to make Willie freak out first.
Yeah. Let's hear from
Willie,
Willie.
Willie, I would like you, if you could, to chime in a little bit about how did this actually, your experience with this tangibly where the rubber meets the road at Willie's Trucking.
For sure. First of all, this is the important piece for entrepreneurs and business owners to see the value in training and mapping this out to able to have this growth plan with your people. I I never saw it as well. I thought about it as I could see the it could help us, but never saw that it was that important. And when Hector came to our team, and he was, I actually literally told a person today, a business owner, how Hector had mentioned, man, you're missing the training piece when he came into our company. And we looked at how we could develop our people, and we started to make that a priority for, like he said, in each role, lead and manage and develop people under each role. And what a difference that made. Yeah, just getting everybody aligned with that vision was a big piece. And yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Alan.
Maybe it's an unfair question, and maybe it's unfair in the way I'm going to ask it, and you can, tell me so. You can put me in my place. Is
Yeah, that's
there
all good.
any way that you take that, you said, that was just a real tangible, noticeable difference for us. Is there any way to measure that in the bottom line, dollar wise,
Mm.
in how you saw that make a difference in the company?
Absolutely. Yeah, I and that's exactly. We started getting a lot more efficient with what was happening, and where we saw where training was enforced or done, how we got so much more efficient with in for an example, in truck drivers, and just making them aware if they broke something, well, how could we do this differently next time? What could we learn from it? And just always um, train help with load securement training and whatever all. We implemented all that, and where we started seeing our accidents go down and freight being damaged and actually yeah, how we could be better on time with our freight deliveries and that became it made us just better all around and it showed up big on the bottom line. Yeah, for sure.
I love
This,
that. So you could actually say that having a tangible, intentional process to leverage leadership growth had a direct, measurable impact on profits in the bottom line. On the
yeah,
Big time.
absolutely. You know
that
what?
is so good.
One of the big ones here is we're talking about bottom line impact and how do you measure this? And it's one that every business has to endure, and that's turnover, right? There's turnover because you lose good people because they get, caught on a opportunity somewhere else when they're not sure of their growth plan local where they're at, so they go chase the new opportunity. But if you develop them right, then they stay with you, through that path. And then secondly, what you see is that you are now developing future leaders and you're promoting from within. So you're not having this downtime when you hire outside leaders to come to your company because you've had them there. And so that downtime of that learning curve gets reduced because they're already there. They're leveling up. So they're just moving on to the next project. So there's no downtime that you can measure from a real true dollars and cents. That feeds the bottom line directly, right? And so those are some of the key measurables that you could speak to and point to, Alan, and say, yep, here it is. Like turnover went down. We promoted people from within. So we saw this. We saw our culture go up. We saw our efficiencies grow up. We didn't have to go spend money on recruiting because we had them here already. We developed them.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, let's open it up to the room then and get your comments, get your feedback, get your questions.